What's up, guys? Welcome to Cage High Counter. I am Connor. Today's video is going to be my most anticipated fights in the UFC for the month of September 2025, the month of our Lord, the month of the summer ending. Thank fucking God, I hate the summer. No UFC pay-per-view this month, which is very interesting. So we kind of just have 3 fight nights to play around with here, and fights in them, of course. And I kind of like it. I feel like the fight nights are a bit more stacked than they normally would be. There's no Apex events in the month of September, which is great. And yeah, I kind of like that we got rid of the pay-per-view this month. Weirdly enough, I just feel like and then I'm making the fight nights a lot better. And we'll get into the list, and you'll see why, and you'll probably end up agreeing with me or not by the end of the video. But before we get there, guys, make sure you subscribe to the channel over at Cage.Counter and YouTube.com. You are probably there right now. Go ahead, just subscribe to it while you're here. Go ahead, give it a little clicky click, and yeah, I would appreciate it very much. Thank you so much. Let's get on to the video then. Coming in at my number, it's a top 10 list, by the way. I don't know if I probably should have mentioned that earlier. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Starting with my number 10, then, of course, is going to be a recently added fight to the UFC Noche card, and that is Alexander Hernandez versus Diego Ferreira. This just recently got added to the UFC Noche card, going down on September 13th. Alexander Hernandez, of course, coming off the big knockout win over Chase Hooper from, when was that? I think that was only in August, so a very quick turnaround here for Alexander Hernandez. I think he wanted this fight because it's in his hometown of Austin, Texas, and he wanted to be on that card, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's a fun fight here. Kind of a step up into the top 20-ish for Alexander Hernandez. I don't know exactly where we'd put Diego Ferreira, and he's obviously not in the official UFC rankings right now in the top 15. I'd imagine Diego Ferreira somewhere in the top 25 of best lightweights in the world. That makes sense to me. Diego Ferreira is that good. So a big step up here for Alexander Hernandez. Not uncharted territory for Alexander Hernandez. He, of course, popped onto the scene with a huge win and got into the top 10 right away all those years ago. When was this? This must have been 2018-ish, 2017-ish, when he knocked out Benny Dariush. And then, of course, we all remember him going on, won a couple other fights, and then he fought Cowboy, which he got completely embarrassed in that fight, and we all hated him around then. But Alexander Hernandez kind of going through a resurgence right now with the UFC and MMA community fandom, and is kind of becoming well liked again. I think he's grown up a little bit and is kind of growing out of that sort of douchey phase that he seemed to be in when he first entered the UFC, and he's kind of maturing a little bit more now. And I think we're all liking his personality a bit more, and we're certainly liking his fights a lot more now. Because the win against Chase Hooper was awesome. Diego Ferreira coming off a loss to Grant Dawson. No real shame there. I mean, Grant Dawson, tough outing for anyone, especially with his wrestling capabilities. Diego Ferreira, of course, he's a longtime UFC vet at this point, been around the game for so fucking long. Never really been able to crack into the top 10, top 5-ish, and kind of get over with the fans and kind of get into like title shot talks, but he's always been a long stead in this UFC lightweight division, and it should make for a very exciting fight with Alexander Hernandez. Number 9, going Rob Font versus David Martinez. This is also going down on that UFC Noche card on September 13th. Rob Font, of course, longtime UFC veteran. David Martinez, only 1-0 in the UFC. This fight was originally supposed to be Rob Font versus Raul Rosas Jr., in which that, if it was still that fight, it would have been way higher than number 9 on my list, but still, Rob Font fight is going to be a good fight no matter what. It's going to be entertaining no matter who he's fighting. David Martinez, I'll be honest, I don't know too much about him. Like I said, 1-0 in the UFC, coming off a TKO win in his first fight in the UFC. I'm assuming he was a Contender Series guy before that. Rob Font coming off the split decision win over Gene Matsumoto. I forget how you say that guy's last name. Doesn't matter. Rob Font, of course, very entertaining fighter. Been around the UFC for a hot minute now. Fought in main events, or fight night main events, fought on big pay-per-views. Love this knockout of Adrian Yanez. Probably the highlight of his career at this point. And here's David Martinez getting that TKO win. Yeah, should be a fun scrap. David Martinez is Mexican, so they put him on that no-shade card. Got him in the co-main event slot now, so big step up in competition for him. Let's see if he can rise to the occasion. Number 8, Kelvin Gastelum versus Daniel Stoltzfus. I don't know why. I don't even think that guy's German. I don't know why I said it with a German accent. I feel like Stolzfitz, he kind of just say with a German accent no matter what. I'm gonna be real with you. This probably isn't like the eighth best fight this month in the UFC, but I just love Kelvin Gastelum. I've been a Kelvin Gastelum guy since after he was on The Ultimate Fighter, or that was honestly that might have been the last season of The Ultimate Fighter I watched all the way through all those years ago. I think that was in like 2013. So Kelvin Gastelum just been around for so long now, and I am a big Kelvin Gastelum fan. So he's always gonna go on a top 10 list whenever he's fighting for me. He is, of course, coming off the loss to Joe Pyfer, which went down in Mexico earlier this year. Decision loss, which is really saying something because Joe Pyfer fucking cracks, man. He might be the hardest hitter at middleweight, and he still wasn't able to get Kelvin Gastelum away. It just shows how good Kelvin Gastelum's chin really is. Of course, Kelvin Gastelum has so many highlight reel moments in the UFC. I mean, that rise when he was fighting his way to the title shot. He knocked out, Vitor Belfort. He knocked out Bisbane, as you can see here. He dropped Weidman when Weidman was at, peak Weidman or right after peak Weidman, I guess. It's a very entertaining fighter. Awesome guy. Kelvin Gastelum, he's my boy. So I'm putting him on this list. Daniel Strozfitz coming off a loss. He's kind of been win-loss in the UFC. I mean, he kicked off his UFC career. Well, first, he was the guy that dislocated Joe Pyfer's arm in the Contender Series, if you guys remember that, and that was why Joe Pyfer had to wait a whole another year to get another fight on the Dana White Contender Series and then get in the UFC. So that's kind of how he kicked off his UFC journey, and then he went on a 3-fight losing streak, and then he won one, and he's been win-loss ever since. So odd record on this guy, but he's an entertaining fighter nonetheless, and it should make for a pretty good scrap, him versus Kelvin Gastelum. And I'm looking forward to it. Also going down on that Noche card. Have I picked all Noche fights this far? I think I have. That Noche card's fucking stacked. Next fight then, number 7, going Tatiana Suarez versus Amanda Lemos, also on that UFC Noche card. I am just realizing I threw way too many Noche fights on here. Whatever, can't help it. I like what I like. Tatiana Suarez, Amanda Lemos, going down on September 13th. Way down on the prelims there, which is kind of fascinating to me, unless they switch it around by the time we actually get the fight night, which UFC has a tendency of doing. This fight really interesting to me because this might actually be for technically the best UFC strawweight fighter on the roster. With Weili Zhang moving up to flyweight now. They got Virna Jandiroba versus Mackenzie Dern fighting for the belt on that UFC 321 pay-per-view in late October. Honestly, Tatiana Suarez and Amanda Lemos might be better than both those girls. There's a decent chance that that's true. So this should really be for the belt with Weili Zhang vacating, in my opinion. Tatiana Suarez is coming off the loss to Weili Zhang, in which she had a very dominant first round and then got completely dominated in the last 4 rounds, so rounds 2 through 5, and that was amazing to watch. Tatiana Suarez, a long time big UFC prospect who was just nagged by injuries throughout her career and got the title shot finally this year, and it did not go super well for her, so let's see if she can bounce back. Amanda Lemos, of course, coming off a win over Yasmin Lucindo from earlier this year, I believe. Looked very good in that fight. Amanda Lemos, long stead at this UFC strawweight division. Also has a win over Mackenzie Dern, a very recent win over Mackenzie Dern. This was only in like 2023. It's what I'm talking about with the Mackenzie Dern Virna Jandiroba title fight. It's a weird one, I really do feel like the winner of this fight has a claim at being the best strawweight with Weili Zhang out of the picture, straight up. And they should be fighting for the title next against the winner of Jandiroba and Dern, in my opinion. And they would probably end up winning that. Next up, then, my number 6, Jake Matthews versus Neil Magny. Finally, a fight not going down on the Noche card. This fight will be going down on the... Where is this card? I believe this card is in Perth, Australia, going down on September 27th. This is exciting to me because the Jake Matthews rise up, the resurgence of Jake Matthews here is very exciting to me. Jake Matthews kind of been one of those guys, he got in the UFC very young. He might have been in the UFC when he was 19 years old only. I think right around there, 19, 20. And he's 30 now, so he's been in the UFC for 10 years, and he's a vet at this point, While most guys are just now entering the UFC at around, I guess most guys enter the UFC at around like 27, 28. but most guys are like just getting their feet wet a little bit at 30 years old. Jake Matthews is a long time vet now, and then Neil Magny, of course, the most winning UFC welterweight fighter in history. Y'all know, who Neil Magny is. Like I said, Jake Matthews is on riding a 3-fight win streak right now. Very impressive 3-fight win streak, and I'm just curious to see if Jake Matthews can finally get over here and then get into this UFC welterweight rankings, which would be very exciting. I think guys like this, it's hard to do that for so long, to be in the UFC for 10 years, and he's just got to be so good at this point, Jake Matthews. With think of like Charles Oliveira, how long he was in the UFC before he really got into that top 10 and then title shot conversations. I'm curious to see if Jake Matthews could do something similar here, with all that UFC experience, and now get into the top 15, top 10, top 5, and let's see Jake Matthews go on a title run here. Magny, of course, coming off a TKO win over Zaleski dos Santos from just last month, so a very quick turnaround for Neil Magny as well, who's always game. The most respectable guy in the sport, Neil Magny here. So very excited for this fight going down on September 27th. My number 5, Patricio Pitbull versus Lacine Quieta. I'm probably butchering the shit out of his last name, and his first name, honestly. Going down on September 6th on that UFC Paris card, which is only a few days away from when I'm recording this. Very excited. Awesome card, that UFC Paris card, by the way. Patricio Pitbull, of course, coming off the win over Dan Ige from, when was this? Back at that Louisiana card, Dustin Poirier retirement card. He beat Dan Ige in a decision. Of course, Pitbull, longtime Bellator veteran, has wins over Michael Chandler. Pretty much everyone in Bellator that you can name, he has a win over in the lightweight, featherweight area. Was the face of Bellator, especially towards the tail end of Bellator's life. And is a pretty exciting fighter. Hasn't been the most exciting in the UFC thus far, I will say. Obviously, the Yair fight was pretty exciting, but the Dan Ige fight was pretty lackluster. So let's see if Pitbull can pull something out here against the UFC newcomer in Lacine Quieta. Quieta had been fighting at, not Cage Warriors, I think it was Octagon, the promotion name Octagon, is which he was a double champ at. I believe he's a champ at the 145 and 155 divisions in that organization, and he's a big favorite here, actually, by the odds makers. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't do. Ooh, you shouldn't have seen that yet. I didn't do like the most amount of research about him. I watched some highlights on him. He seems good. He seems to keep his hands really low. He's definitely a wild fighter. So I am very curious to see if Pitbull can crack the chin. If Pitbull can kind of put on a veteran type performance against the newcomer, or if the newcomer is going to come in and absolutely demolish Pitbull. It's an interesting one, and I'm glad they kind of put that fight together. They're throwing him straight into the fire here, so let's see, sink or swim for Lacine Quieta. And then, like you just saw, my number 4 fight is going to be Carlos Alvarez versus Dominic Reyes, going down in the main event of that UFC Perth card on September 27th. Carlos Alvarez riding like a 8-fight win streak right now, I believe, with his last win coming over Jan Blachowicz. I just think he hasn't been able to put the top guys away. Like the two last guys he fought is Jan Blachowicz and Volkan Ozdemir. And he wasn't able to really put on exciting performances and put them away. So he's not, like Carlos Alvarez can make a strong case. He should be fighting for the title next. Maybe not over Alex Pereira, but you can make a strong case that he should already have a title shot secured. Of course, he does have a lot of knockout wins, but once he kind of cracked into that top 10, the performances have been a little lackluster, specifically against Jan and Volkan Ozdemir, like I was saying. And then, of course, Dominic Reyes on a big resurgence right now. Just came off the incredible knockout win over Nikita Krylov. Of course, Dominic Reyes for the longest time was just running in trouble, getting knocked out left and right, and we all just felt so bad for Dominic Reyes after the John Jones fight, getting robbed of that split decision, and then going on a terrible 4-fight losing streak in which he was just getting knocked out a lot. And it's very nice to see Dominic Reyes kind of have a resurgence here and, put together a string of wins. Let's see if he can keep it going, though. He's fighting a young up-and-comer, a guy that was in the same position that Dominic Reyes was in all those years ago now. in Kohlsarberg, and it's going to be interesting to see if he can kind of hang with the Young Bucks here, if he can hang with what is probably the best prospect in this light heavyweight division right now in Kohlsarberg. So let's see. It's a step up in competition for both guys, and I'm excited to see it. It's a great main event. Go now 5 rounds, September 27th. On number 3, Imabov. Nasruddin Imabov. It's such a hard name to pronounce. Why do these guys have such hard names to pronounce? Nasruddin Imabov versus Caio Borralho, going down on September 6th. Only a few days away from this one. Main event on UFC Paris card. This one's very exciting. The first of the fighting nerds that are fighting in September. Well, actually, he will be the second of the fighting nerds fighting in September. Whatever, doesn't matter. Nasruddin Imavov, of course, coming off the knockout win over Israel Adesanya, which happened back in, I believe it was in Saudi Arabia back in February, in which he looked pretty good in that fight. You know, it was a close fight, and then he, sometime in the second round, landed a big shot and put Izzy away, got him out of there. Nasruddin Imavov, been around the UFC for a little while now. His last loss was against Sean Strickland, but he's riding a 5-fight win streak now. And let's see, it should be winner of this fight gets the title shot next, in my opinion. There, of course, will be Anthony Fluffy Hernandez versus Reiner de Ritter going down in October. And I suppose the winner of that will have a big argument for the next UFC middleweight title shot as well. And it's probably just going to end up being one of those things. Whoever looks the most impressive out of the winners of those two fights gets the next title shot. Caio Borralho, of course, coming off the win over Jared Cannonier from all the way back in August 2024, which is definitely concerning leading into this fight, is how inactive Caio Borralho has been. Caio Borralho riding like a 7-fight win streak in his own right now, I believe. Or no, it will be 8 if he wins this fight. So 7-fight win streak right now in the UFC. And he's looked pretty damn good doing it. Nothing spectacular except for the Jared Cannonier fight thus far. So let's see if Caio Borralho can look impressive and show out here. He's a pretty big favorite too, leading into this fight. So let's see. I could see a world where Imavov wins a decision here, or maybe Caio Borralho pulls out a finish here. Let's see with the fighting nerds. I think Caio Borralho has been like the least exciting of the fighting nerds, at least of the big four. I know a lot of other guys have joined that team recently, but out of John Silver, Mauricio Ruffi, and Carlos Prates, Caio Borralho kind of gets forgotten about because he doesn't have the flashy finishes like those other three guys have. And but he is kind of the leader of the pack and then the closest one to getting a UFC title shot right now. So let's see. I'm very excited for this fight. It's awesome. It's 5 rounds, and hopefully the winner of this gets a title shot, especially if it's Imavov, because he would definitely deserve one at this point. At that point, my number 2 also going down in that September 6th card, the co-main event actually to what I was just talking about with the main event. Number 2 then Benoit Saint Denis versus Mauricio Ruffi going down on September 6th. Very excited for this fight. Benoit Saint Denis coming off a win over a short notice late replacement opponent in his last fight. Before that, of course, he was on the 2-fight losing streak against Dustin Diamond Poirier and Renato Moicano, in which he did not look good at all in those fights. He was a uber prospect leading into that Dustin Poirier fight. Everybody was riding this guy's nuts. And we all quickly hopped off as soon as Dustin Poirier put his lights out. And let's see if Benoit Saint Denis can kind of get back there now, get back to that hot prospect spot that he was already in. Mauricio Ruffi, of course, coming off the knockout of the year contender. I mean, it pretty much is the knockout of the year. I suppose you could argue now that Lerone Murphy versus Aaron Pico should be the knockout of the year, but really, I think Mauricio Ruffi versus King Green is solidified as the 2025 knockout of the year. Mauricio Ruffi, like I was saying, riding a 3-fight win streak now in the UFC, coming off the knockout of the year. And this is a very exciting fight, man. This is one of my most anticipated of the month. Obviously, it's my number 2. And very much just looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing what's going on the feet here. Obviously, Mauricio Ruffi, very flashy striker. It has incredible knockouts. Just a fun guy to watch. Benoit Saint Denis, I wonder if he's going to be looking to wrestle here. It's like he's not going to want to get knocked out in front of his hometown in Paris. So I could see a world where he tries to wrestle fuck Mauricio Ruffi, and we'll see how that ends up going. Well, I suppose Ruffi's grappling will be tested in this fight unless he gets a quick finish. And we'll see. I think winner of this fight, big things ahead. I mean, should crack into the top 10, or at least should have a top 10 opponent after this, and that's very hard to do in that UFC lightweight division. So exciting things ahead for the winner of this fight, and I am very much looking forward to it. I wish it was 5 rounds. I kind of wish they switched the main and the co-main, or at least just made both 5 rounds. Like UFC been doing that a lot lately, so why not for this fight? But regardless, still very excited to see it, and excited to see who will emerge as the winner. This leads us to our number one, then, guys, or my number one most anticipated fight of the month, the main event of the UFC No Shade card on September 13th. Diego Lopez versus Jean Silva. Super excited for this fight. It kind of has to be this fight for my number one. The surgence of Jean Silva has been so exciting to watch, and Diego Lopez coming off the loss to Alexander Volkanovski, no shame in losing to the champ. And he was just a very exciting prospect before that. Of course, had wins over Brian Ortega and went on that awesome 4-fight win streak to lead him into the UFC title shot. Jean Silva, of course, coming off the win over Bryce Mitchell when she just started barking at him. Jean Silva has been nothing but exciting the entire time he's been in the UFC. The entire time the MMA community has had his eyes on him, he's been nothing but exciting. Of course, he's one of the fighting nerds as well. So what are we getting this month? We're getting out of the fighting nerds, we're getting Mauricio Ruffy, we're getting Jean Silva, and we're getting Caio Borralho. I mean, those are two of the top three guys. Of course, Carlos Prates just got a fight scheduled for the MSG card in November against Leon Edwards. We really need to get a card going with all the fighting nerds on one card, like a fight night in Brazil, you know? Or at this point, I suppose we'll probably be closer to a pay-per-view in Brazil, especially if they can get like one of them getting a title shot. Like imagine Caio wins, and then we do Caio versus Hamza in Brazil, and then just put the rest of the fighting nerds on the main card, you know? Have high-level fights for all of them with Carlos Prates, Mauricio Ruffy, and Jean Silva. That'd be exciting as fuck. The UFC really needs to get on that. I don't know what they're thinking. I think they've waited a little too long for that, quite honestly. But nonetheless, this fight should be very exciting. Should be a stand-up war, I'd imagine. Of course, both guys decent grapplers in their own right, especially Diego Lopez. But we'll see. We'll see if it goes to the ground at all. But awesome fight for that main event on the UFC No Shade card. And I'm very much looking forward to it, guys. Should be a good month. Here's Jean Silva knocking out Drew Dober. That was incredible. Remember that? He just went up the lightweight and knocked out Drew Dober for no reason. And yeah, Fighting Nerds Takeover. I really got to get me a pair of those glasses at some point. Use those. Big Fighting Nerds guy. Anyways, guys, that will do it for the video. Let me know your top 10. Actually, I don't want to read 10 of your most anticipated fights. Let me know your most anticipated fight for the UFC in the month of September. Let me know if you agree with my list. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Like the video, do all that shit. Appreciate it. See you in the next one, guys. Bye-bye.